Hello there, and welcome to a very late episode of Check with Tech, your guide to all things tech. I'm your host, Yaseen Azzam, and first of all, I want to apologize for this episode being uploaded late than usual, and I had some personal problems, but don't worry, the show must go on, and this episode isn't cancelled, or you wouldn't be able to listen to it. So Samsung just announced the new entry in their Lite series. We got from the S10 Lite and also the Note 10 Lite to now we have the Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. Now, if you don't know, Samsung recently just released their new flagship tablet, the Tab S6, and in my opinion, it's one of the best Android tablets on the market. I mean, at $650, it's not that bad considering its specs, but Samsung decided to make a light version of this for much cheaper. And now we don't have a lot of specs about it exactly, but we do know that it has a 10.4-inch display, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, an octa-core processor that Samsung didn't want to reveal yet, but it tops out at 2.3 gigahertz, so it's not as fast as the S6. It also has a 7040 mAh battery, an S Pen, and has an 8 megapixel camera on the back and a 5 megapixel camera on the front, and you have One UI 2.0, which is based off Android 10 in the box. It comes in 3 colors, Oxford Grey, Angora Blue, and Chiffon Pink. Is that how you pronounce chiffon, or is it chiffon? I have no idea. Oh yeah, and it has a headphone jack for those of you who really wanted a headphone jack on the new Samsung tablet. I mean, to be honest, the loss and the grief over the death of the headphone jack is now starting to get weaker. I mean, it's natural. People get over things, especially the loss of a headphone jack, no matter how big that change is. But yeah. In my opinion, I think that there wasn't a need for the already good priced S6. I mean, $650. That almost rivals the new iPad Pro, which starts at, I think, 700, or maybe in between 7 to 800. But overall, I really think that if they're going to make a light version, it should be very cheap. Now, I don't know if you know this, but lately it's been almost impossible for you to find a reasonably good price Switch on retail. I mean, it's been selling very quickly, and a lot of people want to play it because they're bored, naturally. So Sarbaz37, the absolute mad lad that he is, wasted $200 buying replacement parts of the Switch and then piecing them together into his own DIY Nintendo Switch. And let me just say that I want to meet him and congratulate him because it looks very authentic. I mean, with only $200, you don't need a Switch Lite. You can just order the replacement parts and build your own Switch. And he actually posted a guide on how you can do the same thing. But he warns that you have to be incredibly patient. Speaking of the Switch, the new firmware update for the Switch just arrived at 10.0.0, and some person found a code in the firmware that adds preliminary support for a new model of the Nintendo Switch, and its code name is NXABCD. I mean, I thought that was a joke until I saw the codename for the Switch Lite, which is NXABCB. So that seems about right. And the big surprise here is that there is support in that firmware update for a secondary screen, just like the Wii U and the 3DS. Okay, now we know that the secondary screen doesn't work all the time, i.e. the Wii U, But I mean, I don't know how that will work exactly with the Switch. I mean, if the new Switch model, even if it existed, if it would have a new screen, that just wouldn't work out. Why have a completely new form factor when the one you already have is very successful, just like I talked about a few minutes ago? Why change it? I mean, if you want to go all out, then just make another console. But why add a secondary screen to something that is the successor of a very failed console? I mean, I don't believe that it will have support for a secondary screen. I don't even know if there's going to be a new model at all. But if there is, I hope Nintendo learns from their lesson on the Wii U and actually tries to do something right with the secondary screen. For example, the 3DS. The 3DS had a fine secondary screen, nothing too crazy about it. I mean, it's added a few gimmicks. I mean, if they're going to do it, then they should do it like the 3DS. After several weeks of leaks and rumors and doubts, Apple has finally unveiled a new refresh for their popular iPhone SE. And it's called, again, the iPhone SE. I mean, nothing crazy about the name, but crazy about the price. I mean, you have the body of an iPhone 8, literally the same dimensions, same screen size, same everything, with the A13 Bionic chip, and it only costs like $400. So the date of this recording, you can actually pre-order it from yesterday, Friday, 17th of April. And what do you get? Well, you get a fantastic 1821 milliamp hour battery and 3 gigs of RAM and the A13 Bionic chip, and it's all for $400. I mean, if you think the battery is small, I mean, consider this. It actually has 13 hours of video playback and 8 hours of streaming video. The iPhone 11 had 10 hours of streaming and 17 hours of video playback. I mean, yes, there is some difference, but Apple clearly focused on the battery for the iPhone 11 more than the new SE. Basically, you get the same battery, probably the same battery life as the iPhone 8, but the only new thing using the battery is the processor. But this will go down as the cheapest phone to buy if you want the A13 Bionic chip. I mean, I don't know why, but it's alright with me. If you want to buy an iPhone with really low cost but really high performance and specs, yeah, definitely go to the new iPhone SE. So yes, it did turn out to become reality. It's not called the iPhone 9, it's not called the iPhone SE 2, it's just called iPhone SE. You can grab a 64 gig version for $399, 128 for $449, and 256 for $549. I mean, okay, but still, $500 is still pretty good for what you might get. Now, I thought Apple was going to turn its focus completely into trying to make their stuff more affordable, but then I looked at this article from The Verge that said that Apple is now selling the wheels and feet for the Mac Pro for $699 and $299 respectively. So yeah, I think they're still going in the same direction. Rest in peace to Samsung and their very old and barely used voice assistant. Goodbye, S-Voice. You thought I was talking about Bixby? No. Samsung will actually disable S-Voice, which is a really, really old voice assistant, as of June 1st. Who actually uses it? I don't know. If you use it, then yeah, June 1 is your nightmare. And honestly, I don't know who will be affected by that because nobody n- uh, basically used S voice. I mean, I know some friends who don't even know what S voice is. If you don't know what S voice was, it was Samsung first try to basically rival Siri. It was a new voice assistant at the time. It was introduced in 2012 with the S3, and it could do what basic voice assistants could do. They could set reminders, make calls, but they couldn't answer questions in a conversational way. Like, for example, when you talk with Alexa or Siri or Google Assistant, they have this tone that makes it feel like you're actually having a continuous conversation with them, but not with S voice. I mean, to be honest, I'm going out on a limb here, but S voice is a really dumb name. I mean, even Bixby is more unique in design, but I feel like S voice was a really dumb idea at the time. They should have just fleshed it out more instead of creating an entirely new voice assistant. So now we come to the highlight of this episode, the OnePlus 8, the OnePlus 8 Pro, and the... Yeah, exactly. There is no Lite or Z version. It's only just two phones, which is surprising for most companies. I mean, for example, if you have Samsung, you have the Samsung S20, S20 Plus, and the S20 Ultra. So you have three phones. Same thing with Apple and their iPhones. And I just find it a little bit weird that OnePlus isn't going in the same direction, especially since they're going full flagship right now. Yes, basically the OnePlus 8 Pro, spoiler alert, is as expensive or slightly cheaper than what you find on iPhones and Samsungs. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump in OnePlus's new flagship lineup, the 8 and the 8 Pro. Now we'll start with the 8 Pro because in my opinion that's the more impressive feat OnePlus has taken. It has a 6.78 inch QHD plus 120 Hz Fluid AMOLED display. That was a lot. And for screen and displays, OnePlus talked a lot about what they added in the screen from last year. They added MEMC. If you don't know what MEMC is, it's motion estimation, motion compensation, and that's basically a fancy way to just say that the phones will try their best to make videos look from 24 frames per second into 120, but most of the time that doesn't work because it just looks weird. But thank God that's turned off by default. It has the new Snapdragon 865 with Oxygen OS and Warp Charge 30T, Warp Charge 30 wireless, and it has a 4510 mAh battery. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that right. Wireless charging has finally entered OnePlus and their phones. And the good thing about it is it's 30 watts, so it's really fast. But the bad thing about it is those 30 watt wireless charging capabilities are only used if you buy OnePlus their new wireless charger, and it doesn't work on any other charger unless you want a 5 watt regular wireless charging. So basically you have to buy OnePlus's new wireless charger if you want to use really fast wireless charging. Other than that, you're screwed. You have 8 to 12 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, 128 to 256 gigs of UFS 3.0 storage. And now the cameras, just like any other phone manufacturing company, OnePlus focused, most probably this is the most focused thing OnePlus talked about in the announcement. And now for the rear cameras, you have a 48 megapixel f1.78 camera, a 48 megapixel f2.2 120 degree ultra wide camera, a 3 times hybrid zoom camera, an 8 megapixel f2.44 telephoto lens, and 5 megapixel f2.4 color filter lens. What? On the front, you have a 16 megapixel f2.45 selfie camera with a hole punch cutout, so it's not a pop-up camera like the 7 Pro last year, and I was a bit disappointed, but hey, IP68, because it's the most important feature of any phone. Now, a couple of strange things OnePlus has added in their cameras. One, why a color filter? I mean, yes, I understand some people want to spice their photos up a little bit, but why add an entirely different lens just for that? I mean, I'm not judging or anything, but I actually thought that this is going to be a very useful camera, but no, not at all. The complete opposite. And what struck me is that for video you can shoot up to 4K at 60 FPS. Why not 8K? I mean, probably the sensor doesn't support that, but the OnePlus, the Snapdragon 865 can support that. So even the S20 Ultra does have 8K video at, I think it was 24 FPS, but I think resolution is more important than frame rate in my opinion when it comes to video. And then the last thing, why a hole punch cutout? I mean, I don't think I know anyone who was mad at OnePlus for adding a pop-up camera in the 7 Pro. I mean, one, it makes the phone completely notchless without any disturbances. Two, it didn't basically ruin the phone from water damage. Even Dave Lee made an entire review of the phone while putting the OnePlus 7 Pro in a bowl full of water. And it added some safety from privacy concerns. So really, I don't see that much of a reason for why OnePlus went ahead and just completely removed the pop-up camera. But then again, a hole punch cutout is the next best thing. It comes in 3 colors: glacial green, ultramarine blue, and onyx black. Honestly, my favorite on both of these phones is the glacial green, because something about it makes me feel so relaxed. The ultramarine blue is a little bit too blue in my book, and onyx black is just plain black. There's nothing special about it, no offense. But I can notice that on the back it's more glossy than the OnePlus 7 Pro. I mean, it had a little bit more matte feeling, but here it's just more fingerprinty. It's more of a fingerprint magnet than it used to. But yeah. Now let's go to the OnePlus 8. It almost has the exact same thing, but instead you have a 6.55-inch display with 90 hertz, I think. Yeah, it's 90 hertz, which is a bit of a bummer, but not that big, because I mean, I can't see the difference between 90 and 120 hertz, so I'm right with that. I don't mind. It doesn't have wireless charging, but the Pro does. So if you want wireless charging, you have to go with the Pro. Same chip, same RAM, same storage, same charging. You have a 4300 mAh battery, and on the cameras there's something different. You have a 48 megapixel f1.75 main camera. You have a 16 megapixel f2.2 116 degree ultra wide camera. No telephoto camera. And then you have a 2 megapixel f2.4 macro lens. So yeah, if you're really into macro photography, that could be something for you. And it comes in 3 colors: glacial green, interstellar glow, and onyx black. Now, I want to say something. When I first looked at the promo for the OnePlus 8 and I saw the picture of the interstellar glow, I thought it had the color scheme of the Instagram logo. I mean, if you put it at some angle in light, it does look like the color scheme from Instagram and its logo. But I think there's just something wrong with my eye, or I'm not really sure. But overall, the only difference here is there's no blue in the 8, and there's no interstellar glow on the Pro. Now, both of these phones have gotten an upgrade when it comes to price. So, yeah, I mean, it's not as cheap as some of us would have liked, but still really cheap considering what you have. I mean, for the OnePlus 8, it starts at $699, which isn't that bad of an upgrade from the 7 Pro, and the OnePlus 8 Pro It starts at $8.99. And now, if you were lucky and managed to grab a copy of the OnePlus 8 or 8 Pro in April 15, then you're really lucky. And I think you get free launch day packages, which I think includes the Bullets Wireless Z and a wireless charging pad if you ordered the OnePlus 8 Pro. If you're not lucky and didn't manage to grab the OnePlus 8 or 8 Pro in 30 minutes, then you have to wait until April 29. And it's not that far, only 11 days from the day of this recording. What are my opinions? Well, I heard some people say that they now hate OnePlus because they're getting more expensive each year. I mean, compare OnePlus and their incredible deal against something like the S20 series. I mean, if you compare the OnePlus 8 Pro and the Samsung S20 Ultra, you have barely worse cameras, but that's almost no competition, and better wireless charging, all for I think $500 less. So I mean, I think OnePlus is still safe when it comes to price. I mean, I think they're safe for now, but if they do continue to do this in the future, ugh. But overall, I think this is a really great phone, and if you do have the chance, snag one of these phones. They are so good. And please get the glacial green one, because this is my favorite color of any phone now. Yes, even better than the silver color on the Huawei P40 Pro. I feel like this has one of the best phone colors I have seen in a very long time. And now to get to some low-key topics before we end off the week. There have been leaks saying that Google will do the same as Apple and launch their own physical Google debit card, but that's not confirmed as of today. Microsoft teamed up with the NBA to basically share their games on Microsoft Azure, because apparently Microsoft didn't think of a better way to make Azure be more successful. You can now use Apple Music on any of your web browsers, on PC, on your laptop, or a Mac. And finally, Google Stadia supports 5.1 surround sound and an on-screen keyboard for gamepads in Chrome. So if you have been waiting for this your entire life, yeah, now is your chance. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes a long and late episode. Again, I apologize for that, but thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to listen to the other episodes, and don't be afraid to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. As always, this is Yaseen Azzam signing out. See you next weekend.